That year, I was managing a pet store in Springfield, Illinois. People think that kind of job is just feeding fish and scooping kibble. But it's constant customers asking which toys won't shred in a day. Someone bringing in a lizard that hasn't eaten. Kids pressing their noses to the glass tanks while I refill the crickets. I liked it though. I liked knowing most of the dogs by name. Maggie the beagle, Duke the husky, and a Yorkie named Gizmo that barked at every bag of treats. It kept me social, and after closing I enjoyed going home to my little bungalow, just a few blocks off a busier stretch. The house wasn't much, but I kept it clean. Grass trimmed, porch swept, bins tucked back after pickup. I've always believed if you do your part, neighbors leave you alone. The guy next door didn't see it that way. Tom moved in about a year before the trouble started. He looked about 40-something, always wearing that same black hoodie. No matter how hot it got, he kept to himself. No porch lights, no hellos. I'd wave, just trying to be decent, and he'd look at me like I'd asked for money. Our first real words were about garbage. I was dragging my can back from the curb when he appeared on his side, arms crossed. "You cram my space with that thing again. We'll have a problem," he said. I looked down. My can was 3 feet clear of the property line. "All right," I said. "I'll keep it pulled tight," just to end the conversation. He didn't nod or smile, just turned and walked back up his steps. 2 days later, I opened my door for work and found a lump of spoiled meat on the porch, grey, slimy, stinking like it had sat through a blackout. At first I blamed raccoons. They knock bins over all the time around here. I scooped it with a shovel, dumped it in a bag, bleached the boards, and tried to laugh it off. At work, I joked with a car worker that raccoons were leaving me gifts. A week passed. Then one morning there was a Ziploc bag set upright on the mat. Inside, feathers not from one bird. Different sizes and colors. Some with the quills still wet with skin that wasn't raccoons. Someone had sealed that bag. I stood there wondering if I should call someone. In the end, I threw it in the trash and tried to move on. Then came the sparrow. Small, brown, dead but untouched. It wasn't sprawled. It had been placed right in the center of the mat, with its wings tucked and head turned like it was sleeping. I took a photo before I bagged it. Proof, because I knew if I didn't, my mind would try to downplay it later. That one changed everything. Spoiled meat could be trash. A Ziploc could be some sick prank, but a sparrow arranged like a gift. That was intent. Around that time, I caught Tom watching me. I came home from work, arms full of groceries, and he was on his porch with a cigarette, eyes flat, following me as I climbed the steps. I thought about asking if he'd seen anything weird, but the way he looked at me froze the words. It wasn't curiosity. It was something else. One morning there was a nickel on the mat, heads up, next to it a small tuft of rabbit fur. No body, just fur and a coin, as if someone wanted me to know they could leave anything they wanted. Anytime. I bought cameras that day. One over the porch, one covering the side gate. The cameras caught a blur at 4am, a gloved hand reaching into frame, placing something, then pulling back fast. No face, no details, just proof someone was doing this on purpose. I printed a still and walked to Tom's porch. He opened the door a crack, hoodie up, smoke curling out. "Recognize this?" I asked, holding the photo. He didn't even look. "Control your trash," he said, and closed the door. Thursday morning I opened the door and froze. A rabbit lay across the welcome mat. That wasn't an accident. It didn't fall. Someone placed it there on purpose. My hands shook as I bagged it. I called the police, and 2 officers came out. They took photos, watched a camera clip of the hooded figure, bending down to position it, then walked next door and spoke with Tom. He denied everything. They came back and said it was a civil matter, nothing they could prove. I stood on my porch smelling bleach where the rabbit had been, wondering what it would take before someone believed me. After the rabbit, it stopped. No more feathers, no more meat. No more animals. The silence itself felt staged, like the point had been made. Every time I opened the door, I braced myself for something waiting. My phone pinged all night with motion alerts that turned out to be moths or branches. I started talking about moving even though I hadn't planned to leave for another year. I finished the lease, but didn't renew. I found an apartment above a bakery downtown. No yard, no porch, no mat, just a locked stairwell and the smell of bread at 6 a.m. The worst part was knowing someone wanted me to see those animals, wanted me to think about them every time I stepped outside. And it worked. This happened in 2023. I wasn't prepared for how loud life gets when it's just you and a newborn in an old Baltimore apartment. The building was brick outside and thin plaster inside, which basically meant every sound belonged to everyone. I was newly single, working remote 3 days a week for a non-profit, and measuring time in ounces. 4 ounces bought me 30 minutes. 2 ounces meant we were up again before the microwave beeped. The place was a third-floor walk-up. My unit had a narrow living room, a galley kitchen that looked into brick, and a small bedroom where the crib fit only if I turned it sideways. A radiator rattled when it felt like it. The first month was a fog. I loved my daughter completely, but I also said, I can't do this to the sink more times than I'll admit. The first time he yelled, she was 4 weeks old. She had one of those mysterious nighttime cries, not hunger, not a wet diaper, just fury at existing. I walked her around the living room when someone pounded the wall so hard a frame print tilted. Then a man's voice came clear through the drywall. Shut it up. I froze stunned. My daughter paused, then started crying harder. I whispered, I'm trying. Though I knew he couldn't hear me, I thought it could have just been a bad moment from a tired neighbor. But it happened again. Not every night, but enough. Every time she cried too long, he'd hit the wall and shout. First it was quiet, that thing. Then, make it stop. His voice carried a hard edge, sometimes slurred, sometimes sharp. I tried everything. White noise machines, rolled towels at the baseboards, moving the crib to the far wall. I spoke in whispers after dark. Nothing helped. The yelling got under my skin in a way I hadn't expected. My daughter was too little to understand, but to me, it felt like someone was cursing her for existing. Then came the first note, folded, wedged in the doorframe. Teach your baby manners. Blue ballpoint, cramped letters. I snapped a photo, put it on top of the fridge, and emailed my landlord. She said babies cry, it was normal, and to let her know if it escalated. The next note said, if you won't control it, I will call someone who can. This one was taped right to my screen door. I photographed it too. My sister told me to start a paper trail and get a camera. The third note chilled me, printed neatly on a computer. I know when you feed her. 1 a.m., 3:30 a.m., 5 a.m. At the bottom, a coffee ring. He wasn't just annoyed anymore. He was keeping track. I finally decided to confront him. At 9 in the morning, baby strapped to my chest, I knocked. He opened the door like the knock insulted him. He was younger than I expected. Late 30s, maybe, with grey skin and a crabbed shirt. He looked at my baby first, then at me. I live next door, I said. I'm doing everything I can. She cries. That's what babies do. But I need you to stop yelling and stop leaving notes. You. Sorry doesn't help me sleep, he said flatly. I move the crib. I run white noise. I can add rugs. You can stop it from crying, he said. I cannot, I replied. He shrugged and shut the door. For a few days, he was quiet. Then, one rainy night, it started again. Enough. Asterisk pound asterisk enough. My picture frame fell off the wall. A new note was under my welcome mat. Move her to the kitchen where I don't hear it. Or move. That night, my sister came with food, and told me to call the police non-emergency line. The dispatcher said they couldn't do much unless something happened in the moment. Notes and yelling were civil. A week later, something did happen. Around 2 a.m., while feeding my daughter, I heard my doorknob rattle. Not a knock, someone just trying to get in. I froze in the middle of the room, my heart thudding, clutching the baby. The knob turned again, then silence, except the sound of someone breathing just outside the door. I said, loud enough to carry, "Go away. I'm calling the police." The breathing stopped. I called 911 immediately. When officers arrived 10 minutes later, they knocked, badges up. I let them in and explained about the notes and the yelling. One officer checked the hall, then came back with a folded paper tucked in my screen door. It read, "Next time I call child services." The officers logged it, told me to call again if anything else happened. One gave me the number for the district officer who handles landlord issues. Then they left. I didn't sleep again that night. Every sound became a footstep. I moved out within 3 weeks. My sister rented a van and helped me haul what I could. The landlord said the neighbor denied everything. I didn't care. I was gone. My new place is a basement unit in a row house 10 blocks away. The walls are thicker. The neighbor on one side is a retired teacher who bakes. The other side is a quiet guy with headphones. My daughter is 10 months old now, laughing and smearing bananas everywhere. But something stayed. When she cries at night, there's still a flash of tension in my chest. I look at the door without meaning to. I think about the sound of that knob turning, the way someone tried to take hold of my door. I think about those notes. Would he have really tried something? I'll never know. But this is what I do know. Walls aren't agreements. If someone tells you who they are through them, believe it. I still tell my daughter when she fusses, "You're allowed," because she is, and because I refuse to let his voice echo louder than mine. When my youngest left for college in 2020, I started looking at my house differently. For 20 years it had been filled with the constant noise of kids, friends coming through the back door, music too loud in the basement, and cereal bowls left on the counter like offerings. Suddenly it was quiet, and quiet can feel like possibility. The house itself sat on a tree-lined street in a neighborhood where everyone knows when you mow and whether your porch light burns out. My place was modest or cared for. Fresh grey trim, lilacs along the fence, and a front lawn I kept trimmed sharp enough to make my dad proud. Inside, I polished the hardwood floors until they gleamed and set a lemon candle in the kitchen before every showing. I wanted buyers to imagine stepping into something easy, something fresh. I was ready to downsize, maybe find a condo near the Centennial Trail, less mowing, more walking. A new chapter. That was the plan, until Mia, my neighbor, stepped in. Mia lived next door in a one-story with overgrown planters and too many boxes stacked on the porch. She was about my age, maybe a year younger, always in running shoes, though I never saw her run. We weren't friends, not even really acquaintances. Just the polite wave when trash bins rolled out. That was enough for me. The day after the for sale sign went up, she cornered me at the mailbox. I saw the listing, she said, leaning one arm across the lid like she owned it. "You can't sell without my permission." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. "This isn't an HOA," I said. She didn't laugh. She looked at me with that squint people get when they're picking their words one by one. "We have to approve. We can't have just anybody moving in." I told myself she was eccentric and walked away. But it stuck with me the way she'd said, "we." She spoke for the entire block. Then, on the morning of my first showing, I found flyers scattered across my porch and lawn. Big red letters screamed, "Is your neighborhood safe?" They advertised a home security company. At first I thought it was coincidence, until I noticed the same flyers tucked under the wiper blades of my realtor Julie's car. The next day, A bag of trash appeared neatly dumped in the patch of grass by my walkway, coffee grounds, spoiled lettuce, and something sticky that left ants marching by afternoon. I cleaned it up, grumbling, but something about it felt intentional. Then I caught her. A couple from Cordair Lane came to tour. I'd stepped out to give them space, walking to the grocery. When I returned, I saw Mia at the property line talking directly to them. "There's been car prowls here every week," she said loud. "And that roof, it's original, 15 grand at least." The couple looked between her, my house, and their realtor. Within minutes, they left. Julie met my eyes. She didn't say anything, but the frustration in her look said enough. I confronted Mia at the mailbox a few days later. "Please stop talking to buyers," I said firmly. "It's harassment." She smiled with that condescending air, like she was humoring a child. "I'm just informing. If they can't handle the truth, maybe they don't belong here." After that, things escalated. A bright orange city code notice appeared, taped to my door. Possible violation. Contact inspector. It listed excessive weeds and deteriorated fencing. I panicked for half a day until the inspector himself showed up, looked around, and shook his head. "Your yard's fine. Fence is fine." Complaint was anonymous. He didn't say her name, but his eyes slid to her house before he left. Showings became exhausting. I'd sweep up broken glass mysteriously appearing on the walkway. Buyers would arrive to find bags of garbage on the lawn. Once, Mia intercepted 2 women touring and told them loudly, "She's selling because of crime. Ask her." Another time she shouted, "Did she disclose the sump pump? I don't even have a sump pump." I started documenting everything. Photos, dates, screenshots. Julie said it was the best I could do short of legal action. The worst came on a bright Saturday morning. A young couple stood on my porch asking about price. They looked perfect. Serious questions, hopeful eyes. I felt that flicker of relief, the sense that this might finally work. Then Mia came marching up the walkway. "You need to know," she told them, pointing at my house. "She didn't disclose the basement leak, and this neighborhood is full of break-ins." She waved her phone like proof. "I'll call the inspector again." The couple looked at each other, uneasy. The woman tucked her hair nervously behind her ear. "We'll think about it," she said, and they left. My throat tightened, and I couldn't even speak. Julie called. The police officers came, listened, and wrote a report. But in the end they called it civil, unless she trespassed or threatened me directly. There wasn't much they could do. That night I smelled cigarettes through my bedroom window. I pulled the curtain back just enough to see a glowing ember near my trash bins. A figure stood in the shadows, watching. By morning, more garbage was spread across the lawn, placed deliberately. I couldn't take it anymore. Within weeks, I accepted a lower offer for a woman who toured midday when Mia wasn't home. The inspection passed easily. I packed quietly, moved to a townhome near the river, and didn't look back, but the damage stuck around, quiet but heavy. Even now, when I hear a neighbor's wind chime or see someone hovering near a mailbox, I feel that same tension coil in my stomach. I keep replaying her words. "You can't sell without my permission." Her reason remains a mystery. Maybe control, maybe jealousy, or something unhinged. But the truth is, it doesn't take a haunted house or a masked stranger to terrify you. Sometimes it's the neighbor you wave to who decides your life isn't yours to live. By 2015, I was 52, retired, and finally learning what quiet felt like. I left the Department of Corrections at 50. 30 years of concrete, keys, and broken promises will grind you down in ways sleep can't fix. I lived in a one-story place on the south side of Baton Rouge with a deep backyard. I kept the grass trimmed, did little projects around the shed, grilled when the Saints played, and sat out on the back steps with a cold can while Jasper, my shepherd mutt, trotted the fence line like it was his beat. I liked routine. I liked order. A man doesn't spend 3 decades walking ranges without craving a yard where things stay put. The fence had been there when I bought the place. 6-foot cypress privacy boards running the line, with old chain link behind it that marked a true property boundary. I'd replaced 3 posts over the years, dug them out with an auger, and set them deep. That fence wasn't pretty, but it stood straight, and that was good enough. That spring, a guy moved in next door. Travis, late 30s, thin-shaved head, drove a lifted black pickup with tires that belonged on farm equipment. He said he did contracting, which around here could mean sheetrock, wiring, or nothing at all. Odd hours. Baselines late at night that made the boards hum. We shook hands the first week. Nothing unusual. The first problem came 2 months later. I was raking magnolia leaves when I saw him stretched out with a tape measure along the back fence. He straightened up and waved me over like he'd found something important. "You know this fence is on my property," he said. I told him the truth. "The fence sits a foot inside mine, leaving the easement clear so entered you can get to the line. Been that way since before me." "My survey shows different," he said. "Show me the survey," I answered. He said he'd get it from a guy. I didn't think much of it. People love to talk about surveys they can't produce. A week later, I found 2 panels down behind the shed, nails scattered in the dirt like teeth, not wind damage. Hands had been there. I bolted them back, with flags this time. Next morning, Jasper found a Popeye's bag tossed into the grass, grease still wet, a half-gnawed bone lying clean, untouched. Jasper would have shredded that bone if he'd gotten it. That meant someone threw it in overnight. It kept happening. A beer bottle upright in the lawn, like a marker. A smear of something rancid on the shed door. At first I thought maybe kids cutting through, but then I set a trail camera. Day 3. The footage caught Travis in slides and gym shorts, leaning over to toss something underhand. I walked to his porch with the printouts in my hand. He opened the door with a thin smile. "Stop throwing things in my yard," I said. He shrugged. "Could be raccoons." "Raccoons don't shop for stew meat," I told him. "You keep it on your side. I won't call the sheriff." He stepped closer. "You think you can tell me what to do?" "I'm telling you not to poison my dog," I said. My voice stayed flat. Years of corrections teach you how not to give a man the reaction he's hunting for. After that, Jasper started finding little piles of raw meat along the fence line. I picked them up with gloves and a bucket, cursing while the cicadas screamed overhead. Jasper whined when I kept him leashed, ears flicking toward the fence. I set more cameras, this time up high, wide out of reach. Got him again, Travis, sliding meat under the boards like it was a game. I brought the stills to his face. He didn't deny it. Just smiled that smile and called me warden. I'd never been a warden, but I knew what he meant. The shed door started showing scratches. Words carved into the paint with a nail. Nothing clever, just nasty. I painted over twice. The third time I filed a report with the parish deputy. The young officer told me to keep documenting and said, "Call us if it jumps a lane." It felt like it already had. August heat baked into the ground. I was on the back steps with a can in my hand. Jasper sniffing his usual rounds. He froze near the shed, not barking, just that stiff, ears forward stare. Dogs do when the yard has changed. I set the can down, picked up the heavy flashlight by the door, and walked the edge with the beam off. When I flicked it on, the light caught him. Travis stood just beyond the fence, pistol hanging by his thigh. He was talking low, muttering about trespassers. "Travis," I said, "put the gun back in your house." He raised it slightly, not aiming, but not resting either. "You're on my line," he said. "I'm on mine," I told him, "and I've got you on camera." Jasper's claws tapped the porch wood, and Travis twitched the pistol toward the sound, like he was pointing at a ghost. I backed to the house, dialed 911 on speaker. "Neighbor dispute with a firearm. I told dispatch. Man armed at the fence, pointing toward my property. We waited 10 minutes. That felt longer than my whole career. Travis paced, muttering about how I had it coming. I stood in the doorway with the beam steady on his chest, not his eyes. Blue lights washed the boards. Officers ordered him to put the weapon down. He set it on the dirt and stepped back slow, like he was showing the world. He knew how to act right when eyes were on him. They cuffed him and vaulted the fence. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I told them I wanted him to stop. They logged my footage and explained how to file a protective order. The judge signed it within a week. Travis stayed quieter, but still stared when I brought the cans to the curb. He sold the house a year later, leaving behind a broken ladder, a rake, and a patch of overgrown azaleas. The new neighbors wave. They grill on weekends. Their toddler laughs at Jasper through the fence. I'd like to tell you it was all about the fence, but it wasn't. Some men just need a fight to feel taller. He saw a quiet man next door and thought quiet meant weak. What stays with me isn't the night with the gun. It's the months before. The small things, the garbage, the scratches on my shed. The raw meat I pulled from the grass with gloves while my dog whined at my side. That's how you break a neighbor down. One little trespass at a time. Until the night you step out and the gun is waiting. I still walk the yard every evening. Jasper still does his patrol. The fence is patched with new cypress that will silver with age. It looks strong. That's all I want it to be. If you want advice, don't meet petty with petty. Document everything. Call when you need to. Call. And if a man stands at your fence with a gun, don't try to prove anything. Back away. Keep the light steady. And let the ones with badges handle it. That's the closest thing to peace you'll get.